This lesson is all about the volume and the surface area of cylinders. So our essential question is, how can I measure the volume and the surface area of cylinders? A cylinder is a lot like a prism, but the big difference is that the base of a cylinder is always going to be a circle. So just like when we were dealing with prisms, we found the volume of the prisms by finding the area of the base, no matter what shape it was, and multiplying that by the height. It's going to be the same thing for cylinders, except now our base has to be a circle. So the volume of a cylinder is going to equal the area of the base, and since it's a circle, it's going to be r squared times pi times the height. And the height is always the distance between those two bases. So in a cylinder, your bases are always going to be a circle. So this r squared times pi, that is the area of the base. And then h is the height. Now, when it comes to the surface area of a cylinder, if we were to take that cylinder and kind of chop it up a little bit so that we have our base and then chop along the, like cut the circle off, cut down the height, and then cut the bottom circle off too, this is what our cylinder would end up looking like. And when we're finding the surface area, we want to add up all of the areas that create that surface. So like all of the surface, if it was like a can, all of the areas of the can. So we're going to have two bases. So 2 times the area of the base. And again, our bases are always going to be circles. So we're going to find 2 times the area of that circle. And then we're going to multiply it by the lateral area. And what we discovered is with a cylinder, the lateral area ends up being a rectangle. So in this kind of what we call a net, which is what we get if we flatten a 3D shape out, we have our circles, which the area of them would be the radius squared times pi for both of them. So that's why we have 2 times the area of the base. And then my height is one of the dimensions of my rectangle. And then what we discovered here is that this length is the circumference of this circle. So this is going to be 2 times the radius times pi. So we can kind of generalize this into a formula. And that formula would look like this. The surface area is equal to 2 times the area of the base, which since they're a circle, it'd be r squared times pi, plus the lateral area, which is the circumference of that base, 2r pi, times the height. So now we're going to find the surface area and the volume of the cylinder here at right. So let's take a look at this cylinder. 10 is my height. So this is my height, 10. The height is always going to be the distance between the two bases. And that's true whether we're talking about a cylinder or a prism. So I know my height is 10. And then I was given the diameter of my circle, the diameter of my base. So to find the radius, I just cut that diameter in half. So that means that my radius will be 7. Let's start with volume. Volume is the easier one to find. So let's start with that. The volume of a cylinder is going to be equal to the area of the circle base. So r squared, 7 squared, times pi, times my height, 10. Now, when you are multiplying several things and one of them is pi, we're kind of treating pi like it's a variable. So like if I had 7 squared times x times 10, I would multiply the numbers to get one big number, and then I would put x at the end. And we're going to do the same thing with pi. So I'm going to do 7 squared, which is 49, and then I'm going to do 49 times 10, which is 490. And then it would be 490 pi. So I'm still multiplying pi in there. I'm just doing it at the end. This would be the exact answer, 490 pi. I could also get an approximate answer by putting this into my calculator and changing it to a decimal. And if I do that, I get 1,539.38. And since I'm talking about volume, my units will be cubed. So it would be centimeters cubed. And that is how we find the volume. So the area of the base, 49 pi, times the height, 10. Now let's talk about the surface area. So the surface area is a little bit more complicated, but it's really not too terrible. We're just plugging some stuff in. So I have 2 times the area of my base. So 2 times 7 squared times pi, plus the lateral surface area, which is that rectangle. And the rectangle has a dimension of the circumference. So 2 times 7 times pi times the height. That's the other dimension of that rectangle. All right, so now I just plugged everything into that generic formula for surface area. Now I'm going to multiply it out. So I've got 7 squared is 49. 49 times 2 is 98. So this part of my surface area would be 98 pi. That's the areas of the top and the bottom, the bases. Plus, so now I'm going to do 2 times 7 times 10, because remember, we can multiply all those numbers together and then put pi at the end. So that would be 140 times pi. Now, adding together 2 terms that both have pi in them is also like adding together terms with variables. So if I had 98x plus 140x, I would add 98 and 140, and then my answer would still have x in it. It's going to be the same way with pi. So I'm going to do 98 plus 140, and I get that my surface area is equal to 238. Don't forget the pi. So 238 pi. So I can add those 2 terms together because they both have pi in them. If one did not have pi in it, then I would not be able to add them together. All right, let's see what the approximate answer for this one would be. I'm going to multiply it out in my calculator, convert it to a decimal, and I get 747.699. So since I'm ending off with a number bigger than 5, I'm going to round that second 9 up, but that would make it, instead of 699, it would be 70. Surface areas are a measure of area. So the units would be centimeters squared.